So I wanted to show you how to make a very basic GUI. The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to make sure it's in tutorial project. So we'll go new folder. We'll just call it GUI. We'll create this folder. In this folder we're going to create two files. The first one will be the GUI interface. I'm just going to call it user interface. Actually, I'll just call it menu. And now that we have this here, we're going to create one more thing. And we're going to create a new GUI script. Just call it UI menu as well. And in the UI menu right here, we're going to add the script UI menu GUI script. And now our script is attached to our GUI. And in our main collection, we're going to add game object, and we're going to call this GUI. And here we're going to add a component file, and this is going to be our UI menu. So now our GUI is in the game. I'll show you how it works. The reason I'm doing it this way instead of adding a new scene is so that you don't have to create a new scene to go to the pause menu, and we can still see our backgrounds and everything like that. So I'm going to go to our GUI menu script, or our GUI menu, and I'm going to go to the nodes, and I'm going to add a box. And now we have a box right here. I'm just going to center it in the GUI menu. And then I'm going to create one more box. And I'm going to just kind of center it. It doesn't really matter. And the top one will be our resume, and the bottom one will be our quit button. So we'll just go right here. We'll change the ID to resume. And right here we'll change this to quit. And now we're going to go to our GUI script. So in the GUI script, we're only going to need a few nodes here. Really, we're only going to need the onInput node and the initialize node, but I'll just leave the message node just in case. I have a script right here that I've written for this purpose. And first we're going to initialize, and the dot's going to be this object, and then we're going to acquire the input focus so that we're allowed to have to interact with the menu. So we can just control C that. I will leave the script in the description below just so you can follow along. So msg.post, and we're going to send the message to our object, the object we're working in, and we're going to acquire the input focus, which allows us to read our input actions from the game input buttons. And on input, you can just delete this here. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to see if the action ID equals click. Let's make sure our input binding, so left mouse button will be click, so that works fine here. And then we just make sure the action's also pressed, which really you don't need, it just can be helpful. So we're going to go back to our UI script, and we're just going to Control V in here. And then the next line, what we're going to do is we're going to store our button nodes in a local variable. So I'm going to call it resumeb and quitb for each button. So we'll just get the GUI node right here. So this is our local variable, resumeb, and we use GUI.getNode, and then we get the node associated with resume. So if we go to our UI menu, we get the node, and then we get the resume button, which will be the top one right here. And we'll go back to the UI menu, and we will also get our quit node, which does exactly the same thing, except for the node we named the quit button. So now we have our quit node in there as well. And so now we have this function, it's called GUI pick node, which we pick our node, resumeb that our node that we stored in, so we don't have to write this in this area. So we say if the node that we picked it lines up with action.x and action.y. So we get the node that's in this location, and if there's no node there, then we just go next essentially, and then we're going to print this message if we click the resume node. So we got print resume clicked, and then else if the node is in the action location of the action location rather is in the location of the node quit, then we'll print quit clicked. And then when this happens, when either of these happen, we can just, well, first we can test this script real quick. So if we go to our main collection, we see that our nodes are over here, which is fine. So we're just going to control build. Hope everything. So we go to line 24. I forgot to end our if statements, so we'll just make sure end and end. And then when we build it this time, Control B, now we have our menus. And if you see down here in the script, when we clicked resume, it said resume clicked, and when we click quit clicked. So you'll see that. And now we have our buttons hooked up to something, and this is our output for whatever happens when we click our buttons. Now, we don't want our menu visible all the time, so I'm going to go to our main collection. So we have three things: our GUI object, which is this object. We have our mouse, which is this object I showed in last video of how to. So if we get Control B, I'll show you what it does real quick. Basically, it just tells me the object that I click on. That's all that does. And then we have our tile map, which is what you see here, that involves some collisions. Anyways, so I have a main script here. I don't really need anything in here, so basically I think this is, I don't really know what I was doing with the script before. So we'll just go on initialize of the main script, which we're just going to call this player. This is going to be our player script, which is our main script. We can go and add a new game object, and this object will just be called player. And on the player, we can add a component file, which would just be our main script. It's not attached to anything at the moment, so it doesn't do anything. Now our player script, or our main script, is in the game. And so in our main script, what we're going to do is we're going to first on basically initialized, which will just be exactly on the game start. We're going to go msg.post, and we're going to get the GUI and we're going to disable it. So we can just copy and paste this in here. The script's pretty short for the player. So we'll just go with action ID. For me, it's click hash click. Then actually, so on action ID, so we disable the menu when the game starts. And when the player puts in an action ID, what I'm going to actually use for the menu is I'm going to go to here and I'm going to create an input, and we'll just call this input. We'll put it on 0. We'll call this input menu. So on this input, hash menu, then we go msg.post, and then the receiver is going to be the GUI, and then we want to enable the GUI when we press the menu button. So Control B. Now that you see we on initialize, we disabled the menu, and then on the press of 0, which is our menu button, we enable our GUI and resume and quit clicked. So if we press quit and resume, now we want to disable the menu. So we'll go back to our menu script and we'll use the same msg.post, and then the receiver will be GUI. I'll just show you real quick where the GUI is located. So we're disabling this object. Well, we're really not disabling the game object, but we're disabling all the components. So anything attached to the game object will be disabled. It sends it to each and every one of the game object components. So back to the GUI, we send this, and we'll just send disable, and then we'll just Control C, and then we'll Control V. So now our script is complete. So we press Control B, and we press 0, and we press resume. Resume was clicked. Now if I click here, nothing else happens. Now we press resume. Now resume clicked. Press quit. Quit clicked. Menu is closed. Nothing else happens when we click on the menu. And that is how you make a basic GUI for quit and resume. Now you can attach anything to those buttons, and the output will show right below the node that you pick. Hope that was helpful.